Allison.
Hi, how are
How's it?
you?
I'm okay. I'm okay. It's a Thursday. The
Yes.
sun is out.
Yes,
And
here too. It's sunny here
yeah.
too. I'm in Nashville. Where are you right now?
Oh, I'm in Montreal.
You are in Montreal. Which neighborhood are you in?
I'm in the Mile End. So
Ah, that's the last place I lived before I moved.
really? Do you remember
Hmm.
what intersection?
Yes, I was at De Bouillon and let me see, De Bouillon Rachel.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Prime Plateau, Prime
yeah,
Mile End.
yeah. Milan, right at the kind of like cusp of Milan Plateau. Yeah.
I was actually listening to your song Montreal and how you talk about the cathedrals and you
Yes.
sing like half in French and you nail the description and the feeling of Montreal
Oh,
so well in that
thank
song. Like,
you.
yeah, yeah, it's
I've
incredible.
been missing it, we've been talking about coming back and spending a couple of years there with Ida, my, our 8-year-old now. Just because I want her to experience. She's a Canadian girl too, her
Yeah,
her dad's American, but her mama's Canadian, and she's never we visited Montreal, but she hasn't spent real time there yet. And I think we need to do that before she gets too much older.
mm-hmm. Are you wanting her to just kind of experience the city?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
immerse and do some French immersion and
Mm-hmm.
just experience being. I just think it's such a special city. It's so unique, and I didn't fully appreciate. I don't know if you have had the same experience, Kai, but I really didn't fully appreciate that growing up because I didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
It was just all I knew, and it wasn't until I started traveling and leaving other places that I realized how magnificent Montreal really is and how much a part of my evolution as a human and a musician it has been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel the same way. Because I grew up there too, and we left
Yeah.
when I was maybe 10 or 11. So
Yeah.
enough to have picked up French pretty well, but not long enough to really understand what a cool
Yeah.
place it was. And
Yeah.
actually coming back and living here again as an adult is bizarre
Yeah.
because I lived here, up till 10, and then I came back when I was 18, and then I came back again when I was 28.
And it's
So I
so
feel like it's like,
different
all
each
these
time.
different
Are you
periods of your life.
28?
I
Oh my
am
God.
28.
I've arrested you in my mind. Like you're forever like about 20 years old in my mind. 'Cause you were still a
Yeah,
teenager
roaming the
when I
halls
first
of
met you.
yeah, roaming the halls of Folk Alliance.
Yeah. Because I don't think yeah, you were still a teenager the first time I heard you at Folk. I still remember it was in Shauna Cooper's Sweet Beaver Suite at it was either Memphis or Kansas City Folk
Yeah.
Alliance. And you were there with your mom and I mean, I think I want to say 17. Does that
Yeah.
sound right?
That sounds
Yeah.
right. I was
Yeah.
definitely skipping school to
Yeah.
go.
You were a kid. Yeah.
Gladly skipping school.
JT saying hi. It's a
Hey,
CBC.
JT.
CBC to know how much I miss Kaya.
JT
Hey.
wants the CBC to know how much you
I miss you too, JT.
miss. uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you there too, playing with JT in Birds of Chicago
right.
and the Po Girl era as well.
Yes.
And I remember
Yeah.
when you had Ida because you brought her to the conference.
Oh yes, and she was tiny. She was like that was February of 2014. So and she was born December 30th of 2013. So she was
Wow.
not even she was and we went on the road. The first place we went was uh, the Netherlands when she was less than 4 weeks old. I mean, it was just
Wow.
but we had no people were like, that's amazing. It's not it's necessity. Like, this is how we're providing for our
Yeah.
family. So that's we had no plan B, and we had our little baby girl, and she just came everywhere with us for 4 years till she had an intervention with us, and she wanted to go
Sat you
to
down.
school. Sat us down on the couch and like, Mom, Dad, love you, love the band, always gonna sing with you, but I need to go to school full time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she still picks and chooses. She'll be out with me for some of the festivals this summer, and she decides when she wants to come, when she wants to sit in with the band.
Yeah. I was going to ask you how you found it being like a mom on the road, like a parent on the road, because I think
Yeah.
you and a few other people were my first examples of like parents, and especially mothers who were
Yes.
like working artists.
Working, yeah,
Yeah.
and bringing their kids. And I know, well, for me, it was Rhiannon was my example, because her daughter Aoife is, gosh, she must be 11 now, almost maybe 12. But she was my first example that it could be done, where it even occurred to me that that was possible.
Mhm.
And it was really, she was so, just having a sister, a chosen sister I could talk to about the challenges of that. It was tough in one way, but because being a new parent, I think, is just hard no matter what your circumstances are. And it's a huge learning curve, and there's no manual, and it's
Mhm.
different for every family, and it's different for every mother and child or caregiver and child. And, I was so lucky, though, to be surrounded by a really supportive community on the road. I was never isolated. I think about, when people would say, "Oh, that must be so hard." And it was, but I don't know. I often thought, like, my friends who were isolated at home with their kids, who maybe their partner was, away from the home working, or they didn't have family close by, and they were really, really alone with that newborn child. And I think that's much harder. I think when we are in community, it just eases all of the tensions of new parenthood, even though it's still challenging. There's those moments where you're having, where you feel like you're in a breaking moment of, I need 5 minutes of quiet to kind of get myself back together and be
Yeah.
present again for my child. I was able to have those. There was our tour manager for the first 4 years of Ida's life was my best friend, Susie Bolter. So, and
Mhm.
she was, she was, and still is, the married to Chris Merrill, who was the bass player in Birds of Chicago. And
Okay.
that was
Yeah.
the Birds of Chicago era when we were touring with Ida. And so she was with me, my best friend, and I was mama. Ida's first word was dada, her second word was mama, and her third word was ama, which is what she called Susie. That was her
Mhm.
special word for Susie, because she was another mother figure. So
Mhm.
I was never isolated, and a mother figure who is, by the way, much calmer and more organized than I am. It was so good, so great for her to have this other, close woman role model, and they have such a deep bond to this day. And now Susie has a daughter who's half Ida's age, and they're like sisters, and
Mhm.
Susie's still like her, like another mother, an aunt, a close auntie. And I just think having that community around to help me, because it does take a village to raise a child. It takes more than a nuclear family. It really takes an extended community, I believe, to raise children, and for children to feel loved and seen and heard by many different adults in their community and kids in their community is just crucial for healthy development, I think.
Wow, that just hearing you say that gives me so much hope, because I definitely want to have a kid. But I think some of the ways in which I've chosen another path in my life, the path of an artist and the path of being self-employed,
Yeah.
um, sometimes in my moments of anxiety, and especially through the pandemic, I definitely had these flashes to, like, have I made a mistake? Will I not, am I not going to get to these financial goals that I have in life and be able to, I think, have conviction in what I do?
Yeah.
And one of those things is like, well, can I ever be a mom if I don't follow the path of the nuclear family? And so it's really, I don't know, it's just really incredible to hear you say that there is support on the road, and that there is this community that like knows you and will see you at your worst times, and be there to support you.
Yeah, exactly.
um that's just, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a transfer. I understand completely. I mean, I was the opposite of you, where I was convinced I would never, ever have a child, never be a mother. And partially that's my history. There's so much intergenerational abuse and violence in my family, that I just was terrified of somehow passing that forward. And
Mhm.
so I just thought motherhood wasn't for me, for years and years and years. really until I met JT. And then as we grew closer as a couple, it started to bloom as even just a little remote possibility in my mind, because, he knew he wanted to be a parent at some point.
Mhm.
And it was sort of like, well, if I love this person and we're together, then either I'm going to be open to this or we're going to change the nature of our relationship.
Sure.
And
Sure.
then we ended up, but it was a similar thing where it never felt like we were ready. I was 33 when we got pregnant with Ida, and she
Mhm.
was not planned. I had been on birth control pills for 7 years and they had never failed me, and I did not miss a day. People are always like, oh, you messed up. That's how you get pregnant. I'm here to, I'm sorry if this terrifies any person with a uterus listening to this, but I got pregnant whilst taking birth control pills. So it is not 100%, it's 99.999, and there's the
Yeah.
point zero whatever that's Ida, she's like, I'm coming whether you're ready or not. And we had been together for 7 years by the time we got pregnant. And we were
Wow.
grown-ups. I was 33 and JT was in his early, he was 42, I think, at the time.
Mhm.
And, I we felt like we didn't know what we were going to do, but we just thought, well, we're going to go for it.
Yeah.
And it was, we didn't have, very, very similar to you, we were not in a financially stable position. We didn't have savings. We didn't have a plan. We were essentially subsistence touring, for
Yeah.
years, and always thinking, oh, the big break is going to come and it's all going to coalesce and things are going to get, less hand to mouth. And that didn't happen for us. But for 4 years, we were hand to mouth with our child. And those were some of the best years of my life. And I don't regret it. And I'll never regret it. And it's been such a fascinating thing, like for us, kind of finding a bit more stability and security has really only happened in this last year, since there was just the unprecedented and shocking response to the record I made, and having these partnerships blossom and finally getting a publisher, finally finding a label home that really sees and understands and loves and supports me as an artist, not just for one record, but for the next several, where
Yeah.
we've signed up to work together. And now authorship, which has just been shocking to have that kind of
Yeah.
coalesce and emerge as a career path, and also as some financial stability in our lives, and being able to put some savings away for Ida. But that's only happened in the last year, and I'm 42 years old.
Mhm.
And I'm very open about this stuff because I think we need, especially as women, we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about the career and financial struggles in conjunction with motherhood, in conjunction with taking a creative path. There's so much pressure on women to give it up, right?
Yep.
There's so much pressure.
Absolutely.
I can't tell you the number of people when I got pregnant with Ida at 33 who were like, oh, so you're going to get a real job now, you're going to get off the road, you're going to, and
Mhm.
it really wasn't an option for me,
Yep.
because this work isn't just work for me. It's also what keeps me alive. It's my calling, it's my career, it's my personal chosen therapy. It's all of it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so giving up wasn't an option for me. And I think about, we have these rigid notions of what we need in order, or what our children need in order to thrive. And what they really need is us. They need us to be present in their lives and loving in their lives. They
Mhm.
don't need monitors and a special nerve. We never even had a stroller. I carried Ida on my body in a
Wow.
in a little ergo pack. We never had it. We were always in airports. We were on the road probably, I don't know, 300 days of the first 3 years of her life, I would guess. 250, probably 250 days.
Yeah.
And I learned that you can be a nomadic parent. And in fact, historically, we were, as a species, we were
Yeah.
on the move as a species for most of our evolution and history. And when I would sort of study motherhood and child rearing through the millennia of human existence, it is a very new notion, this idea of a nuclear family and you have to have a house and 2.5 cars and a picket fence and all of these things. Those that's a very new idea. And
Mhm.
it's not having a good track record for
No.
children, for children's happiness,
No.
or for adults
No.
happiness, or for the, the sustaining of loving relationship,
Yeah. And
So I just,
it's built
yeah,
on purchasing power,
it
really.
is. Yeah.
It's accumulate, accumulate, accumulate
Yes.
and
And
insulate,
exactly.
you know.
And none of that is, I'm not saying that, of course, like I'm not, poverty is an extreme hardship when you're in dire poverty. And we were very privileged in that we weren't, in the sense that even when we think we're poor in our culture, like if you're able to make music and be taken into people's homes and lives and given things and put on stages and, you know
Yes.
donated a banjo case by Union Blues, thank you very much, but, things like that. It's like we are not, even when we think we're poor, we're actually doing really well. We're never, none of the people in our circle of like poor artists are starving. It's
Yes.
not, it's a different kind of a poverty. When we're talking about poverty, it's still unbelievable riches when you look at it on a global scale. And
Mhm.
our children have access to medical care and our, good food and all of those things. So I could never call, even though we were working poor in a sense for the last many years, we
Mhm.
were also so unbelievably privileged and could do everything, that our daughter needed. I gave birth in Wisconsin, and they have an
Mhm.
incredible, mother centered healthcare system there. I gave birth at the Columbia Birth Center just outside of Milwaukee, and it couldn't have been more nurturing and wonderful. And so I had a doula, and we were able to afford her, and we were able to raise money through touring and through, to have our child. So I just think about how we think about, the sort of wealth that is needed to have a family and how skewed that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember we were talking, I think this was back in the fall, but you had been chuckling about how the Grammys, at the Grammys, you were considered, best new emerging artists, and
Yeah,
you were chuckling about, well, yeah,
yeah,
I've been doing this for a long
yeah,
time.
yeah,
And I was just wondering, like, how has that been for you, that sort of, well, first of all, Outside Child is an unbelievable record and so deserving of all you're so deserving of all the success that you've gotten. But I was wondering how that has felt sort of for so many years in this kind of subterranean
yes,
space that
yes,
all of us
yeah,
artists are in, and community in that and joy in that. And
yeah,
then, once you're that is recognized, I
yeah,
guess, in the way
yeah.
that Outside Child has been recognized. I was curious about how that's been.
It's
Any emotion,
Yeah,
and all
I
emotion
mean,
welcome.
it's been very surreal, It really has. It's been this, but very hopeful on the one hand of seeing that, okay, so this is what is possible within a year when kind of all of these mysterious factors for whatever reason coalesce, and so much is just like timing and
Mm, yeah.
and chance. Like there's just no, because as we all know, we are, as Kai's referring to, we've been in this kind of underground to semi-underground, close-knit, international roots community,
Yeah.
and flying below the radar of a lot of, the industry, really, the music industry, capital M, capital I. We've been just flying below that radar. I certainly have,
Yeah.
um, for many years. And exactly, there's joy and community in that, and we've sustained a living, of course, not a killing, but a living. And but it has been this really wild to see industry kind of, come together behind this record in a very different way than I've ever experienced. And I have to say, so little that, like, we all strive to make, the most honest, true real great art that we can make all the time. None of us are dialing or phoning anything in ever, and we've all been privy to making records and hearing records that deserved so much attention that didn't get them, didn't get it. And so I don't take this for granted, nor do I consider it to be, it's the word deserving is such an interesting word. There's so much deserving art, right, that doesn't get its due or its place or its time or its amplifying that I wished it had, and I just think it's a testament to all of the creative workers within this industry that I've connected with over the last year and a half, couple of years, and it really, for me, it was during the lockdown, it was when I was forced to stop, when I was forced to get off the hamster wheel of subsistence touring that we'd been on, and that I was frankly burning out on at that point. And especially, after our daughter decided she wanted to get off the road, it became this juggling act of separation. And I was not okay with it, of being away, both of us being away from when we were doing birds, both of us being away from our child for extended periods. My sister moved in with us. We made it work in that way, but I realized it wasn't what I wanted. And when we were forced to stop, when the lockdown came, it was this period of deep kind of mourning and reckoning and self-reflection for me as well, of questioning my choices and questioning whether I could continue on the path that I was on, and what did I really have to offer as an artist and as a human, as a cultural worker in the world. And really, I realized, like, how am I using my words? That's all I really have, are my words and melodies. And how am I using them effectively? Does it make sense to be doing this subsistence touring anymore with my child now getting older and needing her mom and being away? And, and it was a period of mourning and of depression for several months for me. But then I had made this record, Outside Child, and I didn't know what to do with it. And that's when JT and I really started thinking about, well, what is our, we need to find a publisher. We need to find the right partner to release this if we're going to release it. And I realized that I didn't want to release it unless I had the right partner, that I didn't want to do another indie release and, have it become a part of my sort of endless subsistence touring cycle. And that's when we were afforded this time because of great, terrible tragedy. And, we met our manager, Carissa, and then we started to reach out to different labels, and we had some absolutely horrific, I had some appalling Zoom meetings with some label, in our folks who shall remain unnamed, but like just and things being said to me that were so deeply discouraging, And then in quick succession, it was Breonna Taylor, and it was Ahmaud Arbery, and it was George Floyd being murdered. And it was a shift, at least among white executive culture, of suddenly realizing, oh, maybe we need to be listening more deeply to what Black people in general are saying. And, oh, wait, we have no Black artists, or we've been tokenizing and didn't realize, or we've been, suddenly we were starting to get calls back. But it really wasn't until we started following our intuition more, and I started following my intuition more. I reached out to Brandy Carlisle. We didn't know each other that well when I sent her my record, I just had this instinct of maybe she'll get it. And even if she doesn't get it, I respect how she conducts her career, that it's not just music. It's also the Looking Out Foundation. It's also always using whatever platform she has to amplify other marginalized artists. It's always, it's always community based. And that's how I have operated on a much smaller scale with a much tinier platform, but how I want to grow as I try and grow what is a solo career. I was also terrified of that. My entire life, I have been much more comfortable kind of withdrawing, dissolving into the collective, into the collaboration. I've never wanted to put myself forward in my own name. And that's residual from, an abusive childhood, really. And that was something that I realized I had to change too, that if I'm going to live in fear like that, how does that get passed forward to my child? I don't want it to be. And so it was a lot of learning curve steps, but mostly listening to intuition and then reaching out to people based on that, and not listening to executives who told me that I was worthless, deciding that they weren't right to work. I might be worthless to them, but I'm not worthless to myself. And the record won't be
Absolutely.
worthless to every person that hears it. And so I, held out for about a year and a half, and rejected some offers that would have meant that the record went nowhere if I had taken those offers. But even though I needed, the little pittance they were going to give me as an advance, we were desperate for it at the time, but we just decided to hold out. And we were able to do that because we also had community and friends who were helping us. We had a friend loan us money in the pandemic. We were able to do an online concert that, got us our rent for a few months. We also, Yola and my sister Anna Teixeira and our family all hunkered down together through the pandemic, so we were able to you know share expenses and support each other through it. We found ways to survive that time, and get through it, and be able to say no to terrible offers. Saying no to terrible offers is really healthy. Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard to do, because
Yeah.
we're constantly told to devalue ourselves as artists, right? And we're constantly told to, oh, you should be so lucky as to take this crappy offer. Like, you should be so lucky to pay to play, or to play for free. We've all been there. And I'm still there sometimes, depending on what it is. I'm and if it's something that's close to my heart, if it's a benefit for something, I will always show up, and that, like, for something I care about. But there's so much pressure on us as artists always to devalue our time and our work. And so I held out for a really long time, and then suddenly there was this coalescing of all these different elements, and it was fine. It was Brandy listening to the record and just loving it, and having all these ideas of immediately saying, I got to call Margie Chesky at Fantasy Records. She is going to get this. She's going to get you. And
Yeah.
and then we had this meeting, and that was the case. But all of this was happening over Zoom, remotely, and we built these relationships slowly over the course of a year. And then it was Joel Amsterdam, who's the publicist at Fantasy Records, had an intuition. We've got to bring in Meg Helsel, who is a publicist with Grandstand Media. And she has been the secret weapon for this record. The reason that New York Times profile, all of the things that changed, and the fact that she got that out of the gate, that was the first thing that she got. And John Perellis not only wrote review, but he had listened to my entire back catalog. He had listened to Pogirl records, and
Wow.
noticed when I was playing with a lyric that ended up on an Outside Child song. Like, that depth
That's
of
a
research.
great journalist.
I mean, that is and there's a reason, like, whether you agree with a review of his or you disagree, that man does his research, and he cares, and he has a passion for art. And he also has, there's a legitimizing, a validating to, if he reviews an artist, where then suddenly other reviewers will sometimes just repeat what he said, or they'll assume I should review this because he thinks it's good. It's a kind of a stamp of validation. And so our publicist Meg Helsel had this strategy and this passion for the record, and she knew that it would be difficult to get people to listen, because no one knew my name, no one knew who Allison Russell was. And it's a record that on paper a lot of people want to avoid listening to. Like, oh, it's about her journey out of childhood sexual abuse and trauma. No thanks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to listen to that. That sounds depressing. There was a lot of, and I've had people very candidly tell me that they avoided listening to the record for a long time, worried that it would be depressing or triggering, or and I really appreciate when people tell me that, because I understand it's hard. It's also just hard to listen to a record, for people to, Sorry, every time our male person comes, our
You
dog
have a dog?
Millie the moocher.
This
Yes,
is the most important part of this
I
interview
know.
conversation.
She is the joy. She's our pandemic foster fail. We fell in love with her, and
Oh,
she is my other daughter now. Ida calls her her sister. It's her first
yeah,
sister.
yeah.
And she
Love
is
it.
the most, she's a rescue pup, and our best guess is that she is like part Jack Russell and part Staffordshire Terrier. So she's so funny and smart and a character, and yeah, we love her. So I
That's
apologize for
amazing.
for the barking.
Don't apologize. I
Yeah.
actually I tried to set up my nice mic in my quiet room with all the,
Yes. And then I
soundproofing.
ruined it. I ruined it
No,
with
no,
my
you
janky,
didn't. You
my
didn't
janky
because
feet
my
over here.
upstairs neighbor is having her the water tank in her apartment replaced. So,
Nice. Yeah.
it's a Thursday and life is happening,
I know, it's
all
working from
around us.
home. That's actually my favorite part of the pandemic was those, it's a newscaster from home and their child comes in. Their dog
Yeah.
comes in. I actually loved that. It was like,
Yeah.
yes, we're all just human. We're working from home. We're all juggling all of these things. We're all multitasking and trying to raise our families and work from home and
Very,
make
very
it,
true.
pull it
Yeah.
together. And
Yeah.
it's a work in progress. It's fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
the word that
fine.
comes to mind is grace, grace and in
Yes.
all of the, in what you think is going to be the perfect
Yeah.
situation and container, and the pandemic just kind of broke that all open
Does it
and
all.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that has been, I just think we're all learning how adaptable and flexible and versatile and resilient we actually are as a species, And I do think, I know that that word can feel like a bad word sometimes, but I actually love the word resilience. And I think that that is our birthright as humans. I think that we
yeah,
are on this planet because we had incredibly resilient ancestors. And that's something to, it's important to mourn the circumstances that forced them to be resilient, but it's also something to celebrate and strength to draw from. That's, I've been thinking about that so much during these,
yeah,
whenever, navigating tragic and hard times, that our ancestors lived through times harder than these, so we can
yeah,
get through it. We can really
yeah,
do it.
yeah. At Merle Fest, so your set was the one I was most excited to see, and I'm so glad I saw it. And your band is killer. But I was telling the crowd that it's like, Allison Russell, I'm excited to see her. People are hooting and hollering,
Uh,
and I said, actually, we're both Canadian and we both play the banjo, and both of our dads are from Grenada. And I
no,
was just kind of giving them this little known trivia that I think you and I hadn't even figured out until a few years ago.
recently,
It's
I
like,
know, it was amazing. Well, when
yeah.
I heard your record Grenades, I just lost my mind, and it's still one of my favorite records. I play it all the time.
Thank you.
It's a stunning album. I can't wait to hear your new one. And the new single is gorgeous. I just listened to that. Yeah, I know it's not that new now, whatever it was a couple. To me, if
Yeah.
it's within a year, it's new.
Oh, it's new. If we can extend the shelf life, that's
Yes.
fine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that is the fascinating thing too, Kaya, about this record cycle, that I was thinking about shelf life of music and when
Yeah.
people discover music. And there's this been the kind of these like unfoldings of, and there's another layer of people who maybe had never accessed roots music going, I actually like this, or and then that is a point of discovery for other artists. And that was, to me, the most exciting thing that has happened in conjunction with the sort of doors opening around Outside Child was being invited to curate at the Newport Folk Fest and getting
Yes.
to curate the Once and Future sound set. And
Yes.
I,
Great name, by the way. Once and
oh,
Future Sounds.
and it's where I'm keeping it going. I want to turn it into, and I want you to be involved in some of them. I want to make it into like a Last Waltz style film, and I also want to make it
Wow.
a traveling festival, like sort of similar to an Afropunk, where it could be in different, 1 year it's in
Mm.
Montreal, 1 year it's in Nashville, 1 year it's in Atlanta, 1 year it's in
Yeah.
New Orleans. And I'm just starting to work on developing that now, and it's probably like 2 years down the line, till I can pull
Sure.
it off.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid to try now to do it, and I think stepping into these curatorial roles, especially as artists with intersectional identities, in my, in my case as a queer Black woman, I just think it's really important because so many of these curatorial roles are still cisgender, heterosexual, white men of a certain age, and a lot of those men are wonderful, open-minded, and
Mhm.
trying to have equity in the way that they're booking, but there's just it's really skewed, it's really imbalanced. And
Yeah.
I think about that every night when I play with my band and people are just freaked out that it's all women on stage,
Yeah.
and they're never freaked out when it's all men in a band, which is 90% of the time,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and
assumed. Yeah.
it's assumed. And so part of it is like, I just want to keep, I don't know. I'm gonna. It shouldn't be remarkable. It shouldn't be remarkable for a stage full of women to make music, or a
Mhm.
stage full of non-binary folks to make music.
Yeah.
It just shouldn't be. And so I feel excited about kind of pushing myself more into curatorial spaces to try
Mhm.
and have more kind of balanced representation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's incredible. I mean, one thing with the pandemic is like the isolation I felt at the beginning, let's say March and April,
Yeah.
it had me really worried that I was deeply alone. And I think I had struggled with feeling alone. Um, and I think once we moved through it, I met so many online, as you were saying,
Yes.
through Zoom. I met so many people, and especially Black folks, who I forged these friendships with over the internet,
Yeah.
and who I felt such a feeling of like kinship with and community with. And coming out of the lockdown here in Montreal and flying to do a few gigs. I played the Fort Worth African American Music Festival, which is run by Brandy Pace, who also runs Decolonizing the Music Room. I'm sure
So
you've
amazing.
you've heard
Yeah.
of Brandy or know her.
Yes, I have. We
Um,
haven't met yet, but I'm a huge admirer of her work.
yeah, and I have to tell you, it was the first time. This is Brandy's festival. It's the first time I have ever played to an audience at a festival that was geared towards Black folks. White folks were free to come in and enjoy the music and enjoy the workshops,
Of course.
but the the level of scholarship and of understanding of history and politics and art and poetry,
Yeah.
it started at this, like at a graduate level,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was incredible. Like there were folks like Jake Blunt was there, Justin Robinson, who's one of the original members of the Chocolate Drops, and
Yes.
he doesn't perform for white audiences anymore, and he's very open about that.
I
Um,
didn't realize that. Oh.
yeah, yeah, he really feels like, it's not for him, and that's fine. He really
Yeah.
wants to come out to Black centered events, so he was there for that, and it was just an incredible time, and we all jammed at the end, and I realized that it was my first string band jam that was all like Black and mixed people, and that was really really cool. And I don't know, I was really thankful to Brandy. Like these curatorial roles, I think
So
you're
important.
right,
So
there's great
important.
jobs done by white heterosexual men for sure,
Yeah.
but there's a narrowness that
Yeah.
and the broadening that happens, I think, when other people who with intersectional identities take over those roles, and I think the whole level of the thing just goes up, and it's like for us by us,
Yeah.
and the joy and and I don't have to worry that I'm being tokenized, and should I say yes to this gig, or should I
Yeah.
require the presenter to have you know more Black people on the bill because I can't be like all
The
of these
only
questions
one.
that float around. I'm
Exactly.
sure you've had
Yeah.
them as
All
well.
of us. All of
Like all
us.
of those things, sort of
All of us
the
have had
level. Yeah, yeah.
It's huge, right? When you, and Brandy being the curator, just exactly what you say. It just
Yeah.
opens it up. It changes the entire, and that is what we just need more of it. We need more Brandy paces. We need more festivals
Sorry.
to really take a look at who's curating every year and how can we open this up a bit. And it doesn't have to be like kick out the AD. It could be every year have a guest curator, that you pay really well, who gets to change the who feels welcome at that festival, because if the curators don't reflect our community, this full spectrum of our community, of all the shades and all the orientations and all the gender identities and all the religious all of that stuff, like if none of those folks are ever in curatorial roles, there's always going to be this kind of uncomfortable. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that about Justin. I knew that he had drawn back from performing in general, and I follow his botany, his ethnobotany.
Oh, so great.
I During the pandemic, got obsessed with his. Whenever he would do a live or put out a video, it was like I would watch them. Ida loves them. I learned. I felt like I just learned so much about the colonialism of the land. What has happened even in farming or the land, or how we
Mm.
perceive food, or what we perceive. All of these things that I had not thought about until
Yeah.
I listened to him. Educating. Um, but
And
Country Gentleman
the
Cooks,
joy
for,
that
for
he
those
has.
for
Yeah.
those who are listening, Country Gentleman Cooks, he's got an incredible presence online, and it's he really, you learn so much about our flora and fauna, but also and food, and just Afro-Indigenous influences, and how all of it is just amazing. So and that's something I've been excited to see. I played Farm Aid for the first time last year. I guess it was it yes, 2021. And I was really excited that they are making a real push to support Black and Indigenous and other people of color farmers in
Mhm.
in the United States, and
It's
which is so
wonderful.
so
Yeah.
needed, because there's been such a purposeful, obviously, as in our country in Canada, to robbing of the land and just disenfranchising whole communities that have been
Hmm.
there for thousands of years, you know,
Yeah.
stewarding the land, and we're seeing major depredations and fallout because of it.
Yeah. I've been getting into film scoring and songwriting
So
for TV,
exciting.
which was something that I'd always wanted to do, but I finally went to school for it during the pandemic, and I was able to score this film called Believe in Ghosts. It's a short film and it's available online, and it's about this woman named Samantha, who is a Black farmer in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and she's also a master beekeeper. She's just an all-around badass, and
Ah,
she posted recently, I think she's a falconer now. That's to add to her list of like incredible skill sets.
can we go be her apprentices?
I know, I was wanted to
Take
visit
Ida and
her.
go be her apprentice.
um but
Oh,
she's incredible. Her farm is called Mother's Finest Urban Farm, so
that's
anyone can go
beautiful.
follow her on
I'm
Instagram. But
I'm gonna follow her right this second, so that I
yeah,
don't forget.
she's incredible. um
That's amazing.
yeah, and the film, it's about her, but it's also about her talking about the lack of grants for
Yes.
Black farmers, and the
Yes.
statistics are just like eh, just so depressing.
Yeah.
She says, I apply for them every time and I get rejected every time, and she says it's gotten to the point where I don't rely on that, ever
Yeah.
getting that money.
Yeah.
um yeah, and it was so incredible. I felt like in the pandemic I just didn't want to focus on my own stories at all. I was very exhausted and
Yeah.
would just cry every time I tried to write, and it just wasn't happening for me. And so getting the opportunity to provide music underneath someone else's story brought me back to life a little bit.
Yes.
Um And it was such a way to like learn and observe, like you were saying, sort of blending into the background a little bit.
Yeah.
um yeah, just to kind of witness someone else and try to do their story justice,
Right.
I
There
think that's
comes
I had to I couldn't I, that's all I did for 2 years, you
so
know.
amazing. Well, and that it also means when you go back to doing your more personally based work, you're going to have refilled the well, because that's,
Yeah.
I really think about, um, I don't even think about it as writer's block anymore. I did for so long, but I feel like that's a very almost like capitalistic way to think about art,
Yeah.
like that you're supposed to have like this level of production that increases exponentially forever and ever. And that's just not how creative process works, and sometimes we have to lie fallow, and sometimes we have to sow a different kind of seed in that field. It's like,
Hmm.
I just think that's what it is more. It's more like you're rotating the fields, of
Wow. Yeah.
your your creative farming that you're doing. And that for me, it was, for years I was afraid to sow like the solo field, and I finally did. And but it's, I think there's something so powerful about cross pollination
Mm-hmm.
of different disciplines artistically, of, and exactly as you say, like getting inspired by other stories, inhabiting them,
Mm-hmm.
and finding, tapping into that part, that vein of your creativity, finding some melody you wouldn't have on your own, to help
Mm-hmm.
uplift her story or amplify a specific part of her story. It's such, I think that work is so powerful and important too.
Do you find that How did you find the difference between your role in Birds of Chicago and Poe Girl and your role as Allison Russell? Because I will preface this by saying, from my vantage point, like the grace and command of a stage that you have looks to me to be so natural and so generous. Like you have a generous energy as a band leader on stage, and everyone's like collaborate, like it just feels so potent. um and and I know you said you had a fear of stepping into that, so I was wondering
Yeah.
how it was for you.
I think it just took me this long to grow into it. It
Yeah.
really did. It just takes some of us are later bloomers with certain parts of, I was uh, I started playing music in different bands when I was 17, but I did not feel the kind of confidence, or self worth, to step into it, the role of band leader in that way until very recently. I mean, with Poe Girl and with Birds of Chicago, that was like a co-leadership role.
Yeah.
Poe Girl, I started with Trish Klein, and then when she left the band, my partner at the time, Anna Teixeira, who's now like chosen family, basically, we went from being lovers to being sisters. We're just like incestuous, and we're like, yeah, we're just gonna be sisters and best friends.
Yeah.
But we went through a whole evolution together through that band. But that was always very much, it was always like a co-directorial thing or partnership, which I love that kind of um, collaboration. But I think the difference has, it's been scary in a way to step into. I am the band leader. It's my name. I am in. If something goes wrong, it's on me. If something goes, it's like I am in charge of making sure everybody feels appreciated, and needs met, and it's working in a safe and loving environment, and like, I'm in charge of doing this. I think it helps that I didn't step into that kind of, it's under my name, I'm in charge, until after motherhood, because I think that's really helped. I think I approach
Yeah.
my band, the women that I play with, and the people that I work with, I consider them family, and I want to, it's pretty much golden rule. It's like treat everybody as you would wish to be treated, or as I wish I had been treated. I've learned a lot in different situations too, as
Yeah.
collaborating with in various not always the healthiest situations, but I learned what I didn't want to do, and I learned what didn't feel good for me and what I would never want to be paying forward to somebody else. So I
Mhm.
think coming into the role of band leader, as 2 decades into my career there's a lot that I've learned that hopefully I can bring to bear in this role now. And I'm so glad
Mhm.
that you experience it as feeling that collaboration, because it is.
Yeah.
And I really think like we're afraid to talk about how important there's this there, I don't know, in our popular culture there's a kind of and I think it's linked to the sort of what I think of as the very unhealthy aspects of a kind of almost like a celebrity worship sort of a thing, where it's like this person it's all about them, it's their name, there's a whole huge massive team of collaborators that, let's say, someone like Beyonce works with.
Yeah.
That's not just, she's amazing, obviously she's incredible, charismatic, brilliant, multi-faceted, multi-talented artist and everything. But what we hear and go, that's Beyonce, that's actually the work of scores of people, right? It's the
Absolutely.
work of scores of artists and creative people. And she
Yeah.
is someone who's very good at acknowledging and talking about that, and you know showing her community on stage, and showing all of that stuff. She does that a beautiful job of that. But I think because our culture is so celebrity worship obsessed, it's like we only want to hear or see one person at a time. And I just think that
Mhm.
really it devalues art, and it devalues how art works and how art is a model for good citizenry too.
Yeah.
You can't be what you need to be a good, to my mind, a good musician is also what you need to be a good citizen, right? Like you have
Mhm.
to be able to listen, and it's not all about you, and the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and
Yes. Yeah.
you can't be filling every space all the time, or it's a cacophony. It's not music, it's
Yeah.
not a conversation, it's a cacophony.
Yeah.
And that's what I gravitate, everyone that I work with, I have to feel great about them as people too. I'm just not willing to, I've learned the hard way that if you don't
Yes.
feel good about each other as people, it doesn't matter how brilliant they are, it's not good in the long run. There will be terrible problems if if and that was just learning painfully over the years, the hard way. And I, for years, accepted toxic situations because I had been brought up in such toxicity that was normal to me, that I didn't think that I didn't even know that it was possible for a long time. It took me years to figure out, and learning slowly through the years of like what felt right for me, what my boundaries were, and that it was okay to enforce them, that it was actually more loving and um, kinder to be honest about my own boundaries, and
Mhm.
and enforce them, and that having transparency and communication, having acknowledging everybody's roles, how important they are. If I get up on that stage by myself and play the outside child songs, that is not the same experience as hearing Monique and Shanti Ross of Sister Strings, and Joy Clark and Megan McCormick and Larissa Maestro and Beth Goodfellow and Kashana, who just played with me at the non-com conference yesterday. These artists are amplifying and uplifting the work on so
Mhm.
many levels. The bones of the song have to be good enough for me to dare to invite them to come play with me. But what people are receiving and experiencing isn't just me, it's us. And that's why
Yeah.
it's so I just feel that it's so, and also it pushes back against the token. So much of that is also tokenizing. On the one hand, it's like, oh, we're uplifting you, but we're also tokenizing you, right? It's a kind of a like um it's an over it's a misvaluing and a devaluing at the same time. And I feel like when I really root myself in community, and when I make sure the audience understands what their experience, the listeners, I shouldn't say that, but the people that choose to come and listen, that what they're experiencing is all of us, and that each of these artists has a whole path and a whole history that they are bringing, that is part of why the set sounds good to you.
Yeah.
It's because of their whole history and their whole journey too, not just mine. And I think that that is exciting. That's what keeps me excited as a collaborator, as a
Mm.
writer, and as a singer, and as a band leader. I get excited to play shows with these artists that I respect so much and people that I love so much.
Yeah.
It keeps
Yeah.
me it keeps me interested, and I just want people to know. I want them to remember and to follow, like, go follow Sister Strings, go follow Joy Clark, go follow Beth Goodfellow, go follow Mandy Fair of Sway Wild, go follow um Kashana, go follow all these women, because then that opens you up to this whole other. Music has always been, and I music was always community based until so recently, and I feel like there's been this skewing of perception because of the popularity of these kind of like music as blood sport type shows, like the I don't know, like Idol or The Voice or any of those kind of shows. And again, I'm not trying
Mhm.
to cast aspersions at those shows. They're their own thing, and I know a lot of people enjoy that entertainment. I personally can't watch them because it makes me so uncomfortable. To it just doesn't feel right to me, like what someone singing a cover and being judged upon it and having their dreams crushed and bawling and the camera panning in on them crying. I can't handle it. I can't handle watching another artist go through that. And what I see is um an artist being to me, that feels like they are being tricked. They're being tricked into thinking this is what your value is as an artist, when that's not. Your value as an artist isn't like how well you covered a song according to whatever questionable authority. That is not your
Yes.
value as an artist. Like, your that your value as an artist is something you have to discover as an artist through process,
Mhm.
through creation, through sharing of that creation, through deciding what is meaningful to you,
Mhm.
what was. And it's complex, and it's different for every artist.
Mhm.
And I'm learning that the most valuable thing to me now is being able to express myself fully, not edit, to say what I want to say and mean to say, and not feel reticent to do so because it might offend somebody. I'm never
Mhm.
trying to be offensive, but I'm going to try and be as truthful as I can. There were many years where I swallowed my words, many,
Sure.
many, many, many years, and I'm just not willing to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
and what's also important to me is creating, or not creating, but fostering and being part of an intersectional community that can support each other and uplift each other's work. It's not just about my record, it's also about the records of all of these other amazing artists that I play with. I want them to be amplified. I want that music to be heard in the world. I think that's how we start becoming healthier as a culture, is when we can hear more stories from more people of more varied backgrounds, and realize that we can not only relate, but that might be the story we needed to save our life that day. That might be the story we needed to keep
Yes.
going that day. That might be the story that saves our trans kid's life, who hasn't been able to come forward to us to tell us that they're trans because they felt that we wouldn't accept them, or whatever it is. These layers of the human experience, all of it being heard and valued, is
Yeah.
really, really, really important to me, because that's how I think I can become a good ancestor, because I have a very limited skill set. There's only certain things I can do. I can't cure cancer. I can't bring about world peace single-handedly, but if I can be part of reducing harm in the world by increasing the chances of empathy growing
Mhm.
in someone's heart because they felt connected to something we did, then
Yeah.
that's huge to me.
Yeah. I
If I can help another
Yeah.
artist the way that I was helped to get to this point, I've been able to start to do that a little bit myself, open some doors for other artists, and that feels incredibly healing. and
Yeah.
empowering to me to be able to do that, because it's not, you know, something happening for my record, great, that's a moment. Something happening for a bunch of our records, that's a movement, you know? And that's what I want. I'm very, very interested in shifting the bias of our industry. And I think that we do that there's so many ways to do that. There's so many, I can do it on stage, I can do it behind the scenes, I can do it taking on curatorial roles, I can do it by throwing my name in the hat for the board of the Americana Music Association and
Heck
having more,
yes.
you know, Black perspectives in that boardroom, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
queer
yeah.
and you know, non-male perspectives in
Yes.
that boardroom. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's all the, you know, there's just so many. And it's only in the last 2 years that I've started to think this way. And because I asked myself this question: how am I using my words? I'm always saying that to my kid: use your words, use your words, use your words. How am I using my words? Am I doing it as effectively as I can in as many places as I can to start to help shift things, you know, be part of shifting things?
Yeah.
And I realized I wasn't. And so I started getting really motivated and sort of galvanized to do so, you know, to use my words in every way that I could.
Yeah. Something that you said reminded me of this. Agnes DeMille, who did the we all know Agnes DeMille, but she did the dance in Oklahoma,
Yeah.
and she was talking to Martha Graham, and I think sharing with Martha Graham how dissatisfied she was with the work in Oklahoma and with her work in Oklahoma, and feeling like, you know, I could have done so much better, and sort of ragging on herself, which is, I think, a common thing with artists.
Yes.
And Martha Graham uh, had an incredible response that is, you know, quite lengthy. It's like a paragraph long. And this is Agnes DeMille recounting this, but Martha Graham said, you know, it's you in the world, and your expression is such a unique expression that will only come through you in this one fairly short time.
Yeah.
And so who are you to block that from yourself? Who are you to judge that? And your only role as an artist is to keep the channel open. You don't even have to think the work that you're making is groundbreaking. You don't even have to involve your ego in it, but
Yeah.
just keep the channel open, and just be open to receiving whatever it is that you make, and know that it's yours, and there will be nothing else like it in the world. And Martha Graham described it as a blessed unrest that
Oh,
artists have, that is necessary because that's what keeps us creating, and that's what keeps us dreaming. And in my conversation with you, I'm hearing so many ideas and so many dreams, and it's inspiring me too to have more ideas and more dreams. And you know, I think that's the thing. And whenever I move into a judgment place,
I love
I'm
that.
like, this is not my job. It's not my job to judge, because it's not
That's the
even maybe
critic's
for
job.
me.
No, it's not even maybe for you.
You
I love
know,
that. The idea of a blessed unrest.
yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to kind of leave that, because
I
I
love
feel
that.
like pertinent to our conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've so enjoyed talking to you, Allie, and as always, whether
Me
it's backstage at the Cambridge Folk Festival or
I
on
know we
Zoom.
haven't. Are you gonna be? I feel like we're gonna be somewhere. Are you doing some of the festivals this summer too?
Well, I'm tracking my record this
Oh, you
summer, so
are. That's
yeah,
amazing.
I'm off the
I
festival circuit for now.
well, I can't wait. That's a very good reason that I
Yeah.
want to see you. I can't wait to hear what you do. And yeah, just thank you for this conversation. And thank you for leaving us with that, the blessed unrest. I love that so much. And you're right. It's so we get so caught up in ego and insecurity. I mean, they're you know, two sides of the same coin of judging everything and you can judge
Yes.
yourself into not ever creating anything, you know, and it's just, you're right, keep the channel open. Like we need,
Yeah.
and each artist they're totally unique. We need all the voices. Nobody's interchangeable with anybody else. and nobody's replaceable, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially in an industry that tokenizes Black and brown people and queer
Yes.
people and trans
Women.
folks all the time.
Yeah,
um, I have to keep reminding myself of that. We're all different, we all have different things to say, and
exactly.
we all deserve to play the same stages at the same festivals, you know?
Exactly. And be played back to back on the
Yeah,
radio without there being some ridiculous rule that you can't play three women in a row, let alone three Black women in a row. You know, it's
yeah,
just, it's so absurd. There's no
yeah.
such problem with three white men, you know? So it's,
No.
yeah, right. Like, it's endless back to back. So yeah, I just, I'm here's to bringing some balance to all of it.